Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the YouTube audiobook series for The Forbidden Truth, written by Abby Matthias. I am Darius, and today I will be introducing Chapter 17. If you missed Chapter 16, links in the description below, or you can go back to the playlist, which is also in the description below. And if you are all caught up and ready to go, we will continue on with this doozy of a chapter. Chapter 17, A Devilish Date.
During the first few months of my partnership with Darius, my mind couldn't wrap around the mysterious underrealm that I was taught to despise and fear. Within my child and adolescent years, the fact that all demons were created to destroy humankind and serve the devil was pounded into my skull. All those foul creatures wanted was to bring us down to destruction and drive us off the path of goodness. Yet over the time I have spent with my protector demon, I have found that to be semi-false. Darius Stone wasn't like that at all, and proved that he wanted to keep others on that path and help in any way he could, especially when it came to me. Now, I never imagined myself to be stuck with a demon for the rest of my human life. I also wasn't expecting to teach a creature made by Satan how to deal with his emotions, even though he was once a living being. Yet, I suppose if he lived in regret and anger for all his demon life, he probably forgot what those positive feelings felt like. According to him, these emotions weren't accessible until he met me. Eventually, when time went on, he found the fatherly love he once had because of the kind of relationship we have. Although that was true, he still didn't know the other aspect of his newfound love that he had towards a daughter-like figure instead of a son. So once I told him about it, he of course looked confused and acknowledged it while holding my body close to his. Yet like any other time, the days flew by normally after Darius was interrogated by the devil. From what he told me, they were both just talking about his powers and discussing his time with me. So nothing extravagant would happen again until another month or so. That seemed to be the pattern from what I observed. But that is besides the point. When I went on dates with Damien, Darius would hide himself in a corner and do his own thing. Yet with each date we went on, I started to see the gray in Damien's hair starting to fade. It was a little strange to me at first. Bits of black started to grow at the bottom of his roots, and I decided to ask about them one day. Although my brain was confused, the answer was very simple. His hair was dyed, and he didn't want to dye it anymore. So the only way to resort back to his original hair was by growing it out. Finally knowing that, it all became clear. I thought it was odd for someone to naturally have silver hair. Yet I never questioned it because that was the hair color he had since we first met. And that is as far as the conversation went between us. When it came to my friendship with Scarlet, it truly improved within the past month and a half. Her language towards me was much more sincere and kind, while her actions were genuine. She even asked me to be her maid of honor for her wedding. I was extremely flabbergasted and surprised by her asking that question to me. However, I proudly accepted the responsibility and opportunity to be a part of her special day. Regardless of those relationships, the other big thing I allowed myself to do was gain more control of my demon spirit abilities. To be honest, I think I was getting used to seeing my demon self and realizing that it wasn't forever. It was just my temporary state of existence, and I could go back to my actual human body whenever I wanted. Yet the supernatural powers that I obtained within that form were still acting up randomly. So there were days where I placed my body in bed to nap while Darius and I practiced in the safety of the demon realm. None of my family members would hear anything because of obvious reasons, while I slowly obtained control over my powers. Over the weeks, I was able to conjure the lightning within me through my hands while keeping my emotions at bay. I also somewhat got the hang of my intangibility power. I managed to fall through the second floor of my house to land on the first one. However, that took me quite a while to achieve. There were a couple of close calls where I fell through the earth. However, with my wings, I was able to fly back up and wait for my power to deactivate before landing again. The practices have been going really good, if I say so myself. Failure is expected when you are training and conditioning yourself to new things, but it wasn't turning catastrophic like it did at first. With a more optimistic and tranquil mind, I was able to overcome the random malfunctions of my powers. Yet the most important thing about that accomplishment was that it never would have happened without Darius. As life went on, him and I continued to hang out together and enjoy each other's company. Along with that, I worked on my college animation classes and got constant advice on it because of the lurking demon who watched me work sometimes. Regardless of that, I liked when he gave me his opinions. He sometimes had good ideas and was trying to learn along with me. However, he was almost a year behind the educational courses and needed to start from scratch. Although I was technically still a student, I did my best to answer his questions and even allowed him to work on some animations within my body. To be honest, he finished one of my animated projects that involved making a lyrical music video. It was quite enjoyable to watch him glow with excitement as he was learning something new. But the best part was seeing the smile on his face from feeling important and having purpose for his existence. At this particular moment, it was Friday, March 18th of 2022. I didn't have any classes for the day and was hard at work on my advanced image manipulation project. I had to make an interactive web game for young children using 2D animation and programming within my designated software for school. I had finished all my animations for it, however the programming I was trying to do wasn't cooperating at all. Random body limbs would be replaced by different ones, a random mouth would appear in the background of the project, and so many more things were happening to where I was growing extremely frustrated by it. I grunted and shouted in anger while my demon finally spoke up as he was laying on my bed.
All right, Abby. Your stress level is getting too high. You need to take a break from your assignment.
How can I take a break from it if I know the first draft is due next week? Nothing is working, Darius, and I need to figure out why, I exclaimed, facing my computer. I didn't bother to turn around as I didn't want him to break me down. We were both good at pulling the other's heartstrings to make them bend, so by placing myself towards the screen, it didn't allow him to break me down.
But your mental state is more important than that obnoxious animation. Just take a breather before you punch your Mac. Even if it is for 5 minutes, it would be better than nothing, and I would be very appreciative.
Darius, I said no, and that's final. Regardless of my spite, before I could do anything more, he used one of his powers to turn my computer chair around to face him fully. I tried to protest and grab at my desk to refuse the action. However, I wasn't strong enough to work against the force. So reluctantly, I crossed my arms and sunk in the chair more, knowing he was restricting my work progress. Now I stared at my demon with frustration, as he stared back with a calming expression.
If you won't willingly take a break, I will make you take a break. You have been working on that since early this morning, and it is currently 12:57 p.m. Please just appease me and calm down to where your stress level lowers.
And what do you expect me to do to calm myself? Walk out of my room, grab a bottle of alcohol, and drink it?
No, of course not.
Darius said, shifting himself to the side of my bed to plant his feet on the ground.
Just do what you normally do. Have a genuine conversation with me and forget about this complicated assignment.
Okay, fine, I said, finally letting out a sigh. What do you want to talk about, then?
Anything you want. But it won't be about your project or school. Those are the only limitations. Otherwise, anything else is fair game.
I sat in my pouty position thinking about the branch of conversation I wanted to take. But I didn't know which one would calm me down the fastest so I could continue to work on my homework. The only thing was that when I got upset like this, I didn't feel like talking. My ears were more prone to listen than my mouth was to talk. Effortlessly after the conclusion, I spoke to my demon. Tell me something new about yourself.
Okay, give me specifics. Something about my demon or human life.
I don't care. Just choose a memory or fact and roll with it, I said, sounding very impatient. I didn't mean to sound so harsh, but we both understood that I was upset. So Darius took a brief pause to think upon my statement. Once he finally had something, his voice began to fill the air.
As a doctor, I specialized in pediatrics and family medicine physician. I reflected back on our first true conversation we had back in August about myself and realized I never told you exactly what I did while working at the hospital. I only said what knowledge I had.
Is there really a difference between the two?
In the grand scheme of things, they are both very similar. However, one is strictly for children and the other is for a wide age group. Another thing, giving vaccines and medicine to a child is way different than giving it to an adult. They both need different proportions of medical medicines, and their bodies react to medicine differently. Can you imagine giving a regular dose of aspirin to a child to help reduce a fever?
What would happen if you do? I asked curiously.
They could develop Ray's syndrome, swelling that happens in the liver and brain, which, as you know, is not good and can cause death. Ray's syndrome most commonly occurs after a young person is exposed to a viral infection such as the flu. If they are given aspirin while trying to recover from their illness, it could lead to disaster. That's why doctors try not to give children aspirin to treat things like fever or headache. There are plenty of other safer options out there to use.
Wow, I didn't even know that. Thanks for the tip.
Well, that's what you asked for. Something new about myself. And you're welcome. You learn something new every day.
Did you ever have to deal with Ray's syndrome? Like a patient had it and came in to get it checked out?
I had a close call once. A 5-year-old girl who was being treated for influenza was given aspirin by her parents to help with the fever and pains. However, they gave her a high dosage of it. Her symptoms started with being sleepy and sluggish, but as time passed, the symptoms got worse. Irrational behavior, confusion and hallucinations, weakness in arms and legs, and lastly, seizures. Eventually, if she wouldn't have been treated, her liver and brain would have swelled to the point of death.
Oh my god! That poor girl! How do you even treat something like that?
First and foremost, she was taken straight to the intensive care unit after I diagnosed her. Then, from there, I ordered IV fluids, medication, and cooling blankets to be within her treatment plan. We had to treat the potential swelling that developed and keep the seizures at bay. The cooling blankets were to keep her body temperature from rising anymore and to reduce the fever she already had. Eventually, after about a week, everything resorted back to normal and she was cured. She went home happier than ever. A few days after she went home, the family came back with a drawn card from her and a basket of baked goods thanking me for what I had done for them.
Aw, that was so sweet of them. I responded sweetly to hearing such goodness in the world.
Yeah, it was one of the nicer things that happened to me while working my desired profession. It's a memory I have enjoyed to reflect upon.
After his confession, he smiled from reminiscing, which made me do the same. Also, ironically enough, my stomach began to grumble as I didn't eat anything all day. Yet because of the loudness of it, Darius's expression changed to a more serious one as he pulled up his handy-dandy hologram that somehow kept tabs on my health. Then once he took in my hunger level, he took in a deep breath and lowered his arm.
You didn't tell me you didn't eat breakfast this morning,
he said in a lower voice. I just shrugged my shoulders and said, I wasn't hungry when I woke up. I figured I would wait for lunch.
Well, guess what? It's lunchtime. Get your butt upstairs and eat.
Okay, I'll go and eat. And I began to sit up and lift my body out of my computer chair. Before doing anything, I allowed myself a good stretch as I sat for multiple hours in front of a computer screen. To be quite frank, it felt great on my muscles and tendons. Almost as if a great surge of energy bursted throughout my entire body. It was a little weird at first, but I started to like the amount of dynamism after I was done and laid my arms to my sides. I felt refreshed as if I could run a marathon. So with a smile, I began to walk to my door to open it. Yet as my hand landed on the doorknob, my eyes saw that it began to glow magenta. I gasped at the sudden light surrounding my hand and took a step back to keep my arm extended. I heard Darius immediately jump to action and stand up from my bed to appear at my distress. Yet while he came over, the magenta glow traveled up my arm and began to shine on my entire body. With my heart and lungs rapidly pumping, I felt my protector demon's hands on my shoulders as he spun me around to face him. His face was showing probably the same amount of alarm as mine was. However, I was the one that spoke out first. Darius, I don't know what's happening, but I'm starting to think that the overabundant amount of energy that I feel is from whatever this is, I exclaimed.
Is it overwhelming your body? Does it hurt? Where do you feel this energy?
It's everywhere. I felt it shortly after I began to stretch, and it doesn't hurt. Yet I just feel like I can... And a sudden faintness overpowered my human body to make me black out for a brief moment. I didn't understand what happened during that 30-second time period I was out for. Yet when I came back to consciousness, I was on the cold hard floor trying to wake up. I heard Darius rapidly breathing and physically showing his worry through his words.
Abby! Hold on!
He grunted. Again, because of how long it took for me to recover and refocus myself, I didn't quite understand at the time what he was exactly doing. Although confusion was all that consumed my mind, I eventually heard the heavy tread of Darius's feet walk over and grab a hold of my arms to help me sit up. As he aided me in my time of need, my eyes were able to open and see that I was sitting eye level to him. Knowing that, I then immediately gazed down at my body to realize that whatever happened caused me to enter my demon spirit. So with my breathing quickening once more, I looked back at my demon to get an explanation.
Before you ask, I don't know. You don't look any different than normal, but somehow you transferred out of your body. I caught it before it had the chance to hit the ground. However, I didn't realize you would come crashing down onto the floor within this form. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to physically catch you.
I don't really care about that. I know you would have if you knew about it,
I said, beginning to stand up. Darius assisted me a little upon my action. However, I continued to talk while we situated ourselves.
I should be used to the rough landings by now. But what I'm confused about is what the hell is going on? Why would I suddenly be rejected from my actual body? Did something happen to me within the demon realm?
Like I said a moment ago, you look the same as usual. Nothing out of the ordinary is sticking out.
He paused slightly to bring back up the hologram tool he had embedded in his marking. After a brief moment of looking, he lowered it again and continued talking.
Your demon tab doesn't say anything different, so as to why you were suddenly tossed from your vessel is beyond my understanding.
Upon the response, I stood silent for a brief moment. I didn't know what to say or where to go from here. Whenever it came to this demon world, I didn't know what to make of it. Everything that happened within it just baffled my mind and seemed almost incomprehensible. If my protector demon couldn't fathom what was happening, I certainly wasn't going to be able to. Although I wanted a straight answer, I wasn't going to get one for the time being. At least that was what I thought. Before I could say or do anything more, I physically felt myself fall through the floor and screamed as I was rapidly descending down. After realizing the sensation, I activated my wings to stop myself. However, as I did, I saw that my environment had changed drastically. For as I lowered my head to the ground, I saw the entire kingdom of hell as I was hovering right above Satan's castle.
As I finished telling Abby my examination results I found on the hologram, my heart began to sink in my chest. I never liked leaving her questions unanswered, especially if they were about sporadic subjects like what just happened. However, I didn't want to falsely conclude on something that wasn't truly occurring. Another thing was that my knowledge didn't exceed beyond that point. I honestly didn't know why her body would boot her demon spirit out like that. Before I could try and come up with a solution to the mystery, she suddenly screamed and fell through some sort of black hole that appeared underneath her. "Abby!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. Immediately following it, I jumped through the hole head first to dive in after her. Yet before I could get anywhere, I was pulled back abruptly and flung right into her human body that was laying on her bed. Footsteps were clanking on the stairs and walking through the basement. The light tread got louder with each step and eventually made its way into Abby's room, where I was sitting up confused and panicked.
Abby, honey, what is going on?
Her mother said with worry.
I could hear muffled yelling from upstairs. Are you okay?
Yeah. I just woke up from a nightmare.
I quickly stated out of breath.
I must have been talking in my sleep.
Well, you probably did based on the amount of sweat on your forehead. You look extremely pale, too. Did you eat anything today?
I had a fruit snack or two. I'm okay, Mom, really.
I stated, trying to get her out of my way so I can save Abby from whatever was happening.
You know, that's not good enough, sweetie. We are getting you something to eat right now. Upstairs, young lady.
She ordered.
Mom, I can make myself something to eat later. I will just make sure I have a big dinner tonight. Plus, I have more homework to do.
That will not do. There will be no homework accomplished until I know you have eaten at least a plateful of food, and that is final. Please don't argue with me, Abby. I am only doing what is best for you. Now please, come with me upstairs so I can make you a sandwich or two.
Yes, Mother.
And I reluctantly walked out the door to obey her request, still worried out of my mind about what was happening to my protector child.
Darius, where are you? I need help!
I cried aloud. No reply followed, and I grew extremely scared. I was randomly in hell, without even trying to be in it. I knew this wasn't my intangibility acting up, as I would have clearly fallen through the dirt of the earth. When I fell, I was just automatically within the underground of hell. Something fishy was happening, and I had an awful feeling as to who was behind it all. Eventually, as I stayed within my hovering position above the castle, I heard a random amplified voice fill the air.
Abby Davis, this is Brutus speaking. May you kindly land yourself on the roof of the castle?
No!
I screamed back.
I won't do anything you say until Darius is here with me. And if he can't be here, then I will fly myself back up to him.
I'm afraid you won't be able to do that, Miss Davis. All access to Earth has been closed for the time being for you, and your protector demon is occupied. If you want to try and hurt yourself to prove me right, by all means go for it. However, I suggest if you want to go back to your body as soon as possible, you should cooperate and listen to my instructions. Now please, land on the roof of the castle so we can talk normally.
At that exact moment, I felt like a helpless animal within a zoo, caged by someone else and unable to escape. I most certainly didn't want to hurt myself just to see if he was right. Brutus was Satan's assistant and knew everything he had planned. This interaction alone proved my suspicions to be right, and I was fearful of what was to come. Yet there was no other choice I could make. I couldn't flap my wings forever, and I certainly didn't want to stay stuck down in this forsaken realm. So defeatedly, I carefully descended from the sky and landed 5 feet away from Brutus.
I'm glad you made the right choice. Satan would like to have a word with you personally.
Then why did he not just talk to me while I was in my actual body? I'm not a demon like Darius is.
The technical term for you would be succubus. However, he didn't want your precious demon friends to influence your honest answers. Satan also considered the aspect of your human world and how you earthlings could hear all of the noises that happen within that realm of yours. He figured this would be the best way to discuss with each other. That way, none of your family members think you're going crazy, and the two of you can talk freely. Now please, follow me and I will show you to him.
And what if I say no?
I said, testing my courage. Brutus, however, just stared at me with all seriousness. No emotion expressed, but with just a couple sentences he persuaded me to follow behind.
I suggest, if you don't want the wrath of Satan upon you, that you should follow his orders. Trust me, you wouldn't want to get on his bad side. I've seen the kind of ways he's tortured those who refuse his requests.
He led me down a long black spiral staircase that led from the roof to the 5th floor of the castle. I recall being on the 4th floor when that horrible billiards game took place. However, as of right now, Brutus was walking me down a long hallway that led to a huge dining room. The area itself was full of dark blue and black decorations, along with a chandelier hanging from the ceiling. The walls were made of black brimstone, while the floor was made of dark marble. The sound of my high heels stepping down clacked loudly as I observed the room. Eventually, though, I saw Satan sitting at one end of the table with a wide smirk. For some reason, he was dressed differently than his standard blue button-up. Instead, he was wearing a black suit with dark purple accents that shimmered in the chandelier and firelight that was lit along the walls. For the first time ever, I saw Satan formally dressed as if he was trying to impress someone. Yet the only person in the room besides him was me. Brutus left briefly after I heard the giant wooden door slam to seclude us from the rest of the demon realm.
Abby Davis, how lovely to see you. Glad you could join me for dinner. Please, have a seat.
Satan said in somewhat of a gentle tone.
I kind of didn't have a choice. What did you do?
I said, refusing to sit.
What do you mean? I'm just trying to be a gentleman.
How am I able to be down here? Darius told me that it's against the law to bring a human down here.
Well, isn't it obvious? Your demon spirit gives you access. As long as you're in that succubus vessel, you can be down here.
That's exactly my point. You somehow forced me out of my human body, didn't you? You were the cause of me glowing and blacking out. You pulled my demon spirit out without my consent in order to summon me down here.
See? You figured it out on your own. I didn't even need to explain it to you. You're way better at figuring things out than your assigned protector demon. Pretty shocking if you ask me, seeming how he was a doctor in his past life. But tonight isn't about him. It's about you. Please allow my chefs to feed your empty stomach with some delicious meats and fruits.
At his statement, my body developed goosebumps from the amount of bewilderment I was feeling. Why was he being so nice to me? He even gave me a compliment about identifying his plan to bring me here. Yet I should know better than anyone what Satan was trying to do because of Darius. So with a calm demeanor, I straightened myself and walked over to the opposite end of the table from where he was sitting. Peering down at the elongated table, a beautiful black china plate with gold vine designs was laying in front of me, along with a gold fork, knife, and spoon. Otherwise, nothing filled the dark mahogany table. Once I was situated, he clapped twice loudly and another door slammed open from behind him. Many demons, dressed in black chef's outfits, quickly brought out a variety of meat like steak, turkey, chicken, and a miscellaneous one that I wasn't going to touch. As for the sides, there were a huge bowl of mashed potatoes, golden apples, and gravy to accommodate the rest of the meal. Once the food was placed along the entire table, Satan stood up and made his way to the first plate of meat, while the chefs lined up in a row.
As tradition here, Miss Davis, I must go through the food to ensure it is cooked to perfection. I will only be a moment.
At his response, I didn't say anything. I figured it would be best if I stayed silent in order to keep things civil. So while I sat in the chair formally, Satan lifted his hand and grabbed a piece of steak with his bare hand. He placed it into his mouth and chewed it fast. His expression remained emotionless. Once he was done and swallowed, he turned to the first chef and spoke.
Cooked just the way I like it. My only complaint is a tinge more salt, and you have it perfect. You may go.
Next, he moved to the chicken and complimented it almost the same. However, he said more pepper was needed instead of salt. Satan excused the second chef in line and moved on to the turkey. However, when he ate it, his face immediately went sour as if he was disgusted. Of course, upon the expression, I grew nervous as I knew he was going to act out. Yet as I stared at the devil, he gazed back at me, swallowed hard, and took a deep breath before speaking.
The turkey is completely wrong. It is too dry and will have to be drenched in gravy in order for it to be edible. For future reference, brine it and truss the legs before you cook it. That way the flavor will be there while the meat will be moist. Do I make myself clear?
The third chef looked very surprised, yet he turned out very grateful as he nodded his head ferociously.
Good. You're dismissed as well.
After that, the demon bolted to the doors to get out of his sight. The rest of the testing went like that. Both good and bad results came about. However, none of the employees died on the spot like I thought they were. All of them were safely back behind the swinging cooking doors where they belonged. Once Satan and I were alone again, he snapped his fingers and a couple pieces of meat flew onto my plate, along with an apple, a scoop of potatoes, and gravy on top.
Bon appetit,
he said, raising his right hand in the air. I just stayed in place with a blank expression. I didn't know what to think about what was happening in front of my eyes. I couldn't wrap my head around this whole dinner scenario and why he was trying so hard. Another thing, I really didn't want to eat across from this being. If I had the choice, I would never be sitting at the devil's table. However, I didn't see any other way out, especially if Darius was somehow occupied or trapped on Earth. Although my current situation seemed bleak, I at least knew that the food wasn't poisoned or tainted if he tasted each dish. So with a sigh, I eventually picked up my fork and stabbed a piece of steak to begin my slow eating. The evil sitting across from me ate like such an animal. No utensils were used, just his hands. I could physically see grease running through his fingers from the steak he stabbed with his claws. Gravy covered the corner of his mouth, and I wanted to scold him for being so disgusting. Yet I held my tongue and stayed silent until he spoke to me.
So, do you have any guesses as to why I summoned you down here for a meeting?
No. Normally, if you want to meet with someone, you torture my protector demon. As to why you would suddenly drag me down here, I would like to know why.
Well, I'm sure Darius told you about his evaluation he had with me back at the restaurant. You were with your friend Richard at the time while I sat with my demon.
At his response, two feelings developed within my chest: anger and confusion. The way he said the phrase, "my demon," rubbed me the wrong way. I knew he was showing his dominance and ownership over my protector. Just because he was with me didn't mean he was free. As much as I didn't want to believe it, my mind couldn't help but recognize that he technically was still Darius's creator. Yet what was getting to me the most was the name Satan told me. Who the hell was Richard? I don't even know anyone with a name like that. I was with Damien that day. Even though my mind was circling, it suddenly sounded a piece of information I learned way back at Thanksgiving about the devil's behavior.
I firmly believe he isn't trying to change. He's trying to deceive me. If nothing has changed between us within the past 13 years, it isn't going to change now.
Deceit was in his nature. He was trying to be sly and convince me that he was my friend when really he wasn't. He was just trying to get something out of both of us, like Darius said. This game of two just turned into a game of three.
Yes, I remember that day. I only heard a brief summary of it. As to the specifics of what happened between the two of you were kept privately.
At my response, he straightened himself in his chair and looked surprised.
Wow, he actually didn't tell you everything like some gossip girl?
No, he didn't. There are still a lot of things he doesn't tell me about that happens within his life. If he doesn't want to talk about it, I don't pressure him to say anything.
But demanding is different than asking. If you for sure want someone to talk, you have to drive it out of them. Especially for men like Darius and I.
What do you mean, men like you two? To be frank, you're way different than he is.
Maybe on the outside, but on the inside we are more alike than you may think. For example, our ability to express positive emotions. We both had a hard time harnessing those feelings, at least until you came along.
The food that was in my mouth instantly slid down my throat and made me choke a little after his statement. That was the biggest lie I had ever heard from him. There was absolutely no way I changed how he expressed himself. Chills consumed my spine as I now stared wide-eyed at Satan across the way. He had a grimacing smirk upon his face while his eyes were fixated on me. I somewhat felt that burning sensation that occurred when he intently focused upon someone. However, the feeling felt more tingly than anything this time around. Then at that moment, I didn't know which one I would rather feel. The weird tingles or the burning of flesh.
I beg your pardon?
I asked after recovering from choking.
I believe you heard me, Abby. You were the one who changed my ways. And this is only part of showing my appreciation.
I'm sorry, but I don't want anything from you. To recite a quote you have said many times, you are Satan, the biggest evil known to man. You haven't done anything to make my life any better, and have actually worsened it. Why would I want something from the devil himself?
I semi-shouted in frustration. Instead of him shifting to anger, I saw his eyes squint while the corner of his mouth rose into a smirk. He looked pleased to see me worked up, and it sent another shiver down my spine.
Because not just anyone obtains gifts or is even favored by the King of Demons. It's an honor every citizen desires to have. However, it takes a great deal to get my attention. Miss Davis, you have caught my attention in more ways than one. I bear no ill will on you whatsoever. This dinner and this meeting is just the start of a brand new relationship between you and I.
Once again, I sat in silence, unable to respond. All I really could do was eat a piece of turkey that I combined with the extra gravy on my plate. Upon my silence, he stared down at his plate and saw that it was empty, so he snapped his fingers to refill his plate. However, as his eye fell upon mine, he saw that I had eaten only half and haven't touched the mysterious meat.
Do you like to try new things, Miss Davis?
It depends on what it is. And please stop calling me that. You know my name. Use it.
I demanded. He briefly chuckled at my little outburst, but responded with,
Well, I know when it comes to food, you'll pretty much eat anything. How about you try your fourth piece of meat? You may come to find out you like it.
Then tell me what it is. I don't feel comfortable eating it without knowing what it is.
With that, Satan started to shift mood slightly. His muscles tensed while his gaze grew stronger onto me. The constant tingles along my skin that I was feeling turned into that normal fiery sensation he used a lot on Darius and I. Yet he contained his fury and spoke in a strained voice.
I want you to guess. If you don't at least try it, I will have to take harsh measures to cram it down your throat. Now please, Abby, just eat it.
With reluctance, I worriedly took my fork and punctured the mysterious meat. Bringing it to my face, I smelled the smokiness as it filled my nose while the vibrant red meat shone its grill marks. The meat was uneasy to see as it still seemed raw, but I still attempted to be optimistic as I took a deep breath and shoved the piece into my mouth. Instantly, as it hit my taste buds, I knew it wasn't anything I have ever tasted before. Plus, all the meats I've ever seen were brown and cooked to almost perfection. Yet, to be honest, it still tasted like it was well done. Without swallowing, I thought of some random mythical creatures that maybe existed in hell and tried guessing what it was.
Some sort of fish?
Nope. Try another guess.
Dragon?
Kind of. But there is a little more of a specific name for it.
Then what's it called?
Swallow it.
He growled. It took me a couple tries. However, eventually, I choked it down, and he smiled widely again.
That was Tidris, my last treasurer on my council. He was a traitor to me after trying to embezzle my money. He was a dragonborn demon. After his traitorous act, he was killed, descaled, and grilled to perfection. So as for the official title of the meat, it's council member.
My stomach immediately churned and felt nauseous after his explanation. I dropped my fork immediately and brought my arms to my body to try and compose myself. However, the weight of that knowledge and nausea overwhelmed me. I just ate demon as if it was an edible meat. And as my demon spirit couldn't handle the idea anymore, I ran through the swinging kitchen doors, found the nearest trash can, and threw up everything I just ate.
This has been Chapter 17, A Devilish Date, from the book The Snake and the Rose. Tune into the next video for Chapter 18. Thank you for listening.